here's a few announcements that I want to just draw your attention to because it's coming up. Next week is what? Thanksgiving, right? So to celebrate for Thanksgiving, our church is putting together a Thanksgiving night on Wednesday, I believe. It's going to be done through Zoom. So if you want to tune in, bulletin should give you the detail. I'm just giving you the light version of it. So this Wednesday, we're gathering for prayer and just good times together. On Sunday, we're going to have a special Thanksgiving worship service. Now, notice you have some of our CICC folks haven't seen me in a while. That's because we, the young people, we give our young worship lately, right? But we're given special occasion for this Thanksgiving Sunday to have a joint worship again. So praise God for that. And then following that, on December 5th, we're going to have 33rd anniversary coming up. So y'all don't know our church, that's okay. But you know one thing, when anniversary happens, big things go down. So if you like big things, party, please come out, 33rd anniversary. And that's about all the announcements I have for right now. Let's turn to our neighbor one more time and say, I am so happy you're here with me today. Can you say that to each other? Especially look for someone you're not very familiar with. Just yell out, hello, so happy for you. All right, awesome. At this point, let's give our church's warm welcome, warm greeting to our awesome pastor here. Let's do it our young version, all right? Young ways. So if in a moment, Pastor Carlos is going to come up. As he comes up, can we all raise our hand to him? And can we all yell out, yo, Pastor? We love you, Pastor. All right, let's do that one more time. Here's Pastor Carlos. Yo, Pastor. We love you, Pastor.
Thank you. Good morning. So good to be with you. Actually, the old generation, or whom we should really refer to as the original generation, right? The original generation have gate crashed the new generation today. The original plan was the new generation were going to worship at the park. Just them. But when I heard about that, I said, no, you can't do that. We have to join you. And so here we are. Do you love to be here? That's right. We should do it more often, right? Yeah, okay. Except those who are not here. They're saying, come back to church and make it quick. Nonetheless, it's always good to be with you. Church is about people. People who come before the presence of God. It's not about a building. It's not about a denomination. It's not about an organization. It's about people who genuinely come together to be before the presence of Jesus. And that's what we're trying to do this morning in this particular environment here at Chino Hills. So I'm grateful that you have come to join us this morning. Today we're continuing a series on intersect, which is a word that combines three words: worship, work, and wealth. And this morning we're going to focus on wealth and how that actually somehow becomes a part of our worship. And obviously wealth is something generated through our work. Can you hear the breeze? It's loud, isn't it? Yeah. Anyway, some of you have heard of the Pandora Papers, have you? Does that sound familiar? Pandora Papers? Well, Pandora Papers is like the number of documents that were somehow retrieved in a hidden way, and it exposed trillions of dollars that are hidden in the Virgin Islands. And there are approximately $32 trillion that are hidden from being taxed. And these are owned by 35 current and former national leaders, along with 400 officials from nearly 100 countries. Have you heard of this? And they put their money over there to avoid being taxed. Now, obviously, there's nothing necessarily illegal about that. But somehow when people hide their savings or their wealth, it is actually for the purpose of not being taxed. And so as long as that is declared in their countries that they have that wealth, that's okay. $32 trillion in the Virgin Islands. That is staggering. If you check out the charts of the rich and poor, you'll soon realize that the world runs by greed. Greed, Greed. Did you know that 750 million people live with no more than $1.90 a day? That's the kind of world we live in. Almost 1 billion people who live with no more than $1.90 a day. According to the Forbes list, the combined wealth of the world's 28 richest billionaires equals to 50% of the world's wealth. Can you imagine that? 28 of the richest people on earth own 50% of the earth's wealth. When it comes to money, scriptures speak a lot. Scriptures address the dangers to and the duties of both rich and poor in the church. Some of us, of course, are wondering, am I poor or am I rich? Obviously, it's a thin line. There is no magic line that says you're poor, you're rich. It's all relative. But there is some kind of understanding of whether we feel like we're hard up or whether we're well off. And so this morning, the question before us is this: what should be the Christian's mindset with money? What are our attitude when it comes to our assets? And what are our conditions with our cash? Now I know, based on scriptures, genuine Christian discipleship must and will touch our pockets. It should and must touch our pockets. And so, if you have your Bibles, turn with me to 1 Timothy chapter 6. 1 Timothy chapter 6. I'm going to read a few verses, beginning with verse 6 of 1 Timothy 6. So if you have your scriptures with you, maybe on your phones, you can look at the Bible app and follow after me. 1 Timothy 6, verse 6. The Apostle Paul writes this: "But godliness actually is a means of great gain when accompanied by contentment. For we have brought nothing into the world, so we cannot take anything out of it either. And if we have food and covering, with these we shall be content. But those who want to get rich fall into temptation and the snare, and many foolish and harmful desires plunge men into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is a root of all sorts of evil, and some, by longing for it, have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many a pang." Dropping down to verse 17, it goes like this: "Instruct those who are rich in this present world not to be conceited or to fix their hope on the uncertainty of riches, but on God, who richly supplies us with all things to enjoy. Instruct them to do good, to be rich in good works, to be generous and ready to share, storing up for themselves the treasure of a good foundation for the future, so that they may take hold of that which is life indeed." May God add His blessings to the reading of His Word. The Apostle Paul describes here for us false teachers. And he describes false teachers in the church as doing two things. Number one, they propagate a deviant kind of teaching in the church. And secondly, they use religion for profit. Using religion for profit. And so this is what occasions the instructions to two groups in the church: those who consider themselves poor, those who consider themselves as rich. Paul talks to both of them. And so the first group, a heads up to the hard up. So if you consider yourself to be in this group of having a difficult time making ends meet, this is Paul's word to you. Number one is this: there is harmony in this world when we are content. The harmony of contentment. Godliness actually is a means of great gain, he says, when accompanied by contentment. Another version writes it this way: they think religion should yield dividends. And of course, religion does yield high dividends, but only to those who are content with what they have. The word contentment was used of people back then who were called Stoics. And the Stoics were self-sufficient people. They did not depend on external circumstances. They were self-sufficient in themselves. Now that word contentment is used now of the Christian. A Christian does not depend on external things for contentment. It doesn't matter whether you have a job or not. It doesn't matter whether the price of gasoline gets to $5. It doesn't matter at all when you are content. That is the meaning for the Christian of contentment. Outside circumstances don't bother the state of the mind and the heart. Paul wrote, Philippians 4, these words, "For I have learned to be content in whatever circumstances I am. I have learned the secret of being filled and going hungry, both of having abundance and suffering need." But the secret of contentment is not found within ourselves as the Stoic and the New Agers teach. This contentment is not within us. It is not self-sufficiency, but it is Christ's sufficiency. That is why Paul continues on with those verses in Philippians 4, very familiar to each one of us. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. So it is Christ's sufficiency. It's not trying to be sufficient on ourselves. And so, why contentment? See, contentment shows consistency with life's realities. We have brought nothing into the world. We cannot take anything out of it either. See, possessions, in other words, today of this earthly life are only the traveling luggage of time. They are not the stuff of eternity. It would be sensible, therefore, in this life to travel light and not store up treasures on earth. You came in naked, you come out naked. Anything in this life will pass away. And so, contentment shows consistency to the world we live in. Naked we come, naked we go. Secondly, contentment shows sufficiency with life's necessities. Verse 8 goes like this: If we have food and covering, with these we shall be content. Now in the Bible, the word covering pertains to both clothing and also a roof, shelter for us. And so Paul is talking about here food, clothing, and shelter. These are life's necessities. And he says, with these we shall be content. So what is Paul trying to say? Paul is not defining the maximum the Christ follower is allowed to have. He's not saying that. But the minimum that is compatible with contentment. In other words, if you've got food, your daily bread, if you've got clothes to wear, whatever they are, if you've got shelter wherein to sleep, to rest, with these, you can be content. So, sufficiency with life's necessities. Luxuries are not essential to contentment. Only the necessities are. And so Paul, having talked about the harmony of contentment, he now actually tells even the poor, the poor people, just like anyone else, we all can become covetous. Okay, now, from being content, actually, we all, regardless of our financial state, can get to a place where we become covetous, greedy. We want some more. And Paul traces the downward spiral of the covetous person. And the first step in this downward spiral is falling into temptation. Those who want to get rich fall into temptation. Does anyone want to get rich here? Of course, right? Just be realistic. We do want to get rich, right? But Paul is saying this. There's nothing wrong with wanting to get rich, but there is always a temptation that goes with it. That's what he's saying. Such giving in to that temptation spirals into a trap, a snare, leading to bondage. And so we need to be careful. Unlike being locked up in an unwanted prison, this trap feels so good. This trap feels so natural that it can be justified as simply following one's heart. Freedom, isn't it? These are foolish, he says, and harmful desires. And this is the second thing he says. Once you fall into temptation, you begin to slide into an addiction, a snare, and many foolish and harmful desires. And so gold is like seawater. The more one drinks of it, the thirstier one becomes. Such is gold. It is not that man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor. Gold is the heaviest of all metals, but is made more heavy by covetousness. So be careful. There's nothing wrong with wanting to get rich, but there's always a temptation that comes with wanting to become rich. And once we fall into that temptation, a trap, it's easy to slide into an addiction. And once there is an addiction, the stage 3 is this: it ends in devastation. It plunges men into ruin and destruction. And so the image here pictures people as sinking and drowning. And that's disaster in this life and destruction in the next life. And here's the irony of it all: those who set their hearts on profit end in total loss. If you set the desire of your heart fully and exclusively on profit and money, you'll end up, ironically, with a total loss. A loss of integrity and the loss of real life. That's why Jesus said in Mark 8:36, "For what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and forfeit his own soul?" See, there's ruin and destruction awaiting those who slide into the temptation that is wealth. Paul says there's more to this solemn warning, verse 10, familiar to all of us, I guess. "For the love of money is a root of all sorts of evil, and some, by longing for it, have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many a pang." So here's the culprit for covetousness: it's the love of money. So it's not money per se, but it's the love of money. And there are all sorts of evil that spring forth from the love of money. Now, Paul only mentions 2 here, but there's a lot more evil that spring from the love of money. Paul first says, when it comes to the faith, if you love money more than God, when it comes to the faith, you've gone out of orbit. What does he mean by that? Wandered away from the faith. You know what wander away means in the Greek New Testament? Wander away is where we get our English word planet. Planet, like Mars and Venus and Mercury and all those planets, right? It's the same word. The root word is the same for wandering away. I guess back in those days, when people looked at the sky and the moon and the stars, they actually didn't think that there was such kind of an order, an orbit, where all these things actually move or rotate or revolve in a special orbit, right? They thought they were just wandering in the sky. And so planet is the word. For those whose God is money, Paul says they have wandered away from the faith. And so what he's saying is this: it's not possible to pursue spiritual truth and earthly treasure. It is not possible to love God and money simultaneously. It's one or the other. And so we either renounce love of money because of our faith, or we make money our God and renounce the faith. Does that make sense? That's why Jesus said, you cannot serve both God and money. You've got to make the choice. Who is your God? Now, we're not talking about money per se, but it's the love, the pursuit, the affection for money. So Paul says, be careful. Secondly, the Bible minces no words and warns that money can be addictive. Ecclesiastes 5 verse 10 says, he who loves money will not be satisfied with money, nor he who loves abundance with its income. There's no satisfaction whatsoever when money becomes our God. We will always crave for more. Proverbs 28 verse 20 says, But a person who wants quick riches will get into trouble. That's why Paul says here, those who pursue money actually stab themselves with many a pang, many a grief, many sorrows, when the love of money becomes the driving force of our lives. So, some of you might have heard of this 19th century millionaire by the name of Jay Gould, Gould. He died and had $100 million in his bank. And this is what he said in his dying breath: I'm the most miserable devil in the world. Can you imagine that? He not only described himself as a devil, but the most miserable devil in the world. You know, Jesus is wise. That's why he taught us to pray, give us this day our daily bread. Life's necessities, being content with what he provides. In a book, Objections Answered, R.C. Sproul tells about a young Jewish boy who lived in Germany many years ago. The lad admired his father big time, and the father led them to the synagogue faithfully. Family was forced to move to another town in Germany, and in this town there was no synagogue, only a Lutheran church. And so the father suddenly announced to the family that they were all going to abandon their Jewish traditions and join the Lutheran church, explaining that all the best people in town attended that church and that it would be good for his business. And so the youngster was confused about what his dad was trying to say. And his deep disappointment gave way to anger, gave way to bitterness that plagued him throughout his life. Well, after he left Germany for England in order to study, this young lad now, each day he went to the British Museum, and in the British Museum he began to formulate his ideas and even compose a book. And in that book, he introduced a whole new worldview and conceived a movement designed to change the world, and even described religion as the opium for the masses. He committed the people who followed him to a life without God, and his ideas became the norm for governments of almost half the world's population. You probably know his name by now: Karl Marx. Karl Marx was that young boy who grew up as a Jew, but his father chose the Lutheran church for business, for money's sake. And it plunged the boy to become this kind of a man. The history of the 20th and even the 21st century was significantly altered because one father let his values become distorted with the love of money. So parents, be careful what you're communicating with your children, because it's easy to say by our actions, it's all about money. And so that's the warning to the Christian poor. Heads up to the hard up. Now, let's go to the warning to the well-off. The well-off. There's some people in the church who would consider themselves okay. It's important to notice that Paul does not direct the rich to divest themselves of their riches. He doesn't say that. He doesn't even encourage that at all. What he does is simply warn the rich of the dangers of wealth and then warn them of their duties as trustees, stewards of Christ. And so, first, omen to the well-off, warning. The first warning he mentions is this: 5-star arrogance. Verse 17, instruct those who are rich in this present world not to be conceited. See, the Old Testament is crystal clear about wealth and pride. Ezekiel 28 verses 4 and 5 says this: you have acquired riches for yourself, you have acquired gold and silver for your treasuries, and your heart is lifted up because of your riches. Wealth often gives birth to vanity. We all know that. It makes people feel self-important. But the money has gone to your head Swelled your head. What a big head. That's what Eugene Peterson does with a paraphrase of Ezekiel 28. The money has gone into your head. Swelled your head. What a big head. And the word means to have the mind scale the highest heavens. The word is actually hype. A hyped mind. It goes up to the heavens and then it looks down on others. And so rich people boast of their address, they boast of their cars, they boast of their yachts, their shares, their stocks, whatever it is that make them feel a little bit more important than the rest of their neighbors. 5-star arrogance. That's the warning. And here's the second. False assurance. Second danger is false security, or to fix their hope on the uncertainties of riches, but on God, who richly supplies us with all things to enjoy. You see, wealth is one of the most uncertain items in this world, correct? It is subject to external threats like rust and decay and theft and climate change and COVID and inflation, etc. There's so much that can work against money. Many have gone to bed rich, but have woken up poor. And so we are, instead, to place our human trust not in property, but in a person, not in gold, but in God. This God of ours is not a killjoy, by the way, who withholds good things from his children. He's not. On the contrary, it says here, he is a generous creator who wants his children to appreciate and enjoy his provision. Amen. That's why we're here, to enjoy. This is his provision. And so God continues to pour out blessing and blessing and blessing upon his children if only they learn to appreciate and enjoy all these things. So here we have wisdom from the Bible. Wealth has the potential of spoiling the two paramount relationships we have. Forgetting God and then despising our neighbor. I mean, how many of people do you know in families, siblings, once the parents pass away, they fight over the inheritance? How many of you know them? How many of you have been to them? How many of you belong to them? There's a struggle for wealth when parents pass away. And so, be careful with wealth. Wealth is okay because God gives us wealth. But be careful we don't forget God and we don't despise our neighbor. And now here's the obligation after the omen to the well-off. Here are some of your obligations. Rich followers of Christ ought to develop the following virtues in their walk with Christ. Number 1, living with a sense of responsibility. Paul says, instruct them to do good, to be rich in good works. In other words, the well-to-do are to add to their riches. If we're already rich, you know what you want to add to your riches? Not more riches, not more finance. Add more riches of good deeds. That's what you do. Do good and be rich in good works. Stack up, store up on good works, and tons of it. That's what he's saying to the well-off. You cannot over-exaggerate it more. You see, wealth can make people lazy. There is no need to burn energy to work for a living, isn't it? You've heard the phrase, filthy and idle rich. But Paul says here, if you're well off, do good and be rich in good deeds. Work hard to help others. Secondly, he says, give with a sense of generosity. To be generous and ready to share. So not only live with a sense of responsibility, but give with a sense of generosity. If you're going to give generously, give big time. You see, to have hearts and hands known to the kind of giving that's good and beyond. That's what he's saying. Good and beyond giving. That's what generous means here. The attitude is one that's always about having things in common, ready to share. Koinonia is the word. Having things in common. If I have more, you have less, I'm going to give you some so that we can share in common. You give what you have, I give what I have, we share in common. Now, that's not communism, by the way. It's communalism, the biblical way. It's sharing what God has entrusted to us to one another, ready to share. That's koinonia. Therefore, sharing what we have with others who do not have. So our generosity is to promote worthy causes and to relieve want in this world. You're well off? What are you doing with all that wealth? Add more good deeds in an already wealthy bank account. Third thing you do is this, Paul says, invest with our sights on eternity, storing up for themselves the treasure of a good foundation for the future, so that they may take hold of that which is life indeed. In other words, here we go again. You've heard the sermon on God or money. You see, earthly wealth in the plan of God is for depositing in the eternal bank of heaven. The well-to-do are instructed to help the needy, support the ministry of the word, and to reach the hard-to-reach with the gospel. That's how we participate in investing wealth for eternity. You do this with your Venmo account, with your Zelle account, with your checkbooks, other transfer mechanisms, or even the offering box right there. We don't forget those, by the way. Can you see it? You see the wooden box there? That's a strategic place. Everybody goes out that way. Just kidding. Transfer the wealth for God's use, because that's how you create your foundation in heaven, by giving towards what is eternal, the Word of God and people. So, you'll grab a hold of life, Paul says. In other words, if we haven't really given the way the Bible describes giving, if our giving to Christ is less than what it ought to be, we're actually not grabbing life in its fullest. We're actually being shortchanged, and we are shortchanging ourselves of the best that this life can be by shortchanging God. But if we learn to be generous, Paul says, you lay hold, you grab, you grasp life itself. That's why Jesus said, it's more blessed to give than to receive. And so those among you who give tremendously to the Lord, you probably are the more joyful people in the world. Honestly. There's a lot more joy when we learn how to give and release what is God's. But the more we are like Ebenezer Scrooge, we're more grumpy, right? Unless we learn to release it all. Paul says, invest with our sights on eternity. I'm going to end quickly. Are you still okay? Last Monday, I had a reunion with my high school boy classmates. Well, all my classmates in high school were boys. 6 of us. I've never seen them for 40 plus years. Now, just a background, where I come from, the school I came from in high school, were the school of the filthy rich back there, back in our country. Filthy rich. They were driven Mercedes-Benz. They were rich people. They live in Forbes Park. They live in Makati. They're rich. I was the exception, of course. At any rate, we had a reunion. And in this reunion, we talked, we laughed the whole night through, and it was somehow all driven by 3 topics: wine, women, and wealth. That was it. 3 topics. And they laughed their hearts out the whole night through. Except for one guy, that was me. I wasn't laughing. Although I understood everything they were talking about, it was difficult for me for the first 2 hours of simply just listening to wild stories. Not used to it anymore. At any rate, the topic began to veer away from those 3 W's because I said, I'm leaving soon. And so they said, we should give time to the pastor to say something. And so I said, you don't need to give me time. I'm glad to be here, to be with you. But nonetheless, the topic of conversation shifted to
COVID. It shifted to fear. It shifted to death. It shifted to what's eternal life going to look like. And they were saying to themselves, you know what I think? The end of the world is when I die. And when I die, the question will be, what did you do? Did you do some good things on earth? And they actually told themselves, well, we're not really that evil, are we? Well, we did some good things. And so just maybe we'll get to heaven. Maybe. Then I said, well, I quoted them and I said, you know, in the Bible, there's a story about the Pharisee and the publican. Both of them went inside the temple in order to pray. And the Pharisee prayed, the religious guy prayed, Lord, thank you that I'm not like that tax collector. Thank you because I pray, I tithe, I fast, etc., etc. Thank you. But the tax collector, who was known to be a sinner, simply prayed a simple prayer, Lord, have mercy on me. And Jesus asked the question, who gets to heaven? Who gets accepted by God? Is it the Pharisee or is it the publican, tax collector? And the answer is the tax collector. And I share that with you because it's not wealth. It's not wine. It's not the good times you have. It's not even the number of good things you've done on earth that makes you right before God. What makes you right before God is His mercy and grace. That's it. And you need to receive that by faith. And so there we are. I said, think about it. Because no matter how good you might think you are here on earth, it just might not be good enough. That's why Jesus said, I don't desire sacrifice. I desire mercy. I want to give you grace. And when we receive that grace and understand how much He loves us and forgives us of all our past, that death on the cross was enough to buy and purchase me from all of my sins so that I need not pay the penalty of my own sin. When I realize how deep that event was, that He died for me, and I received that just like the thief on the cross, today you shall be with me in paradise, just like that thief, then our lives transform. And when our lives transform, this is what Paul is saying, you might be poor, be content. Don't be covetous. You might be rich, give. Give a lot. That's how to live because my grace is sufficient for all that you need. So let me end today. 3 things about wealth. Number 1, cultivate a lifestyle of simplicity. Simplicity. No need for brand names. Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. Say to one another, simple is beautiful. Simple is beautiful. Say to one another, simple is beautiful. The second word, modesty. Simplicity, modesty. Modesty is the quality of being relatively moderate, limited, small in amount, small in rate, small in level. Here's a good rule. Why don't you adopt an economic lifestyle lower than you can command? In other words, don't push your expenses on what you can afford, but always live a little lower than what you are able to give. Live lower than what you can command. Don't push your expenses to the limit. Always leave room for margins, modesty. And number 3, generosity. See, without the rich heart, wealth is an ugly beggar. Ralph Waldo Emerson said that. Prices are rising, correct? We all feel it, and we need to be better stewards. The church needs to tighten its belt, but I believe we will have more, not less, because we will give like never before as we learn to live better lives, trusting Jesus, and then experience that is indeed more blessed to give than to receive. Amen? Amen. So let's pray and ask God to really bless you and to bless our church. Father, thank you for all that you've given to us. Nothing beats life eternal because you died for our sins. Nothing beats abundant life because you've given us that kind of a life. And so, Lord, help us not understand abundant life on our own terms, but on your terms. To trust you, to learn contentment, to shun covetousness, to know what it means to live simply, to pray, give us our daily bread, and then to give so well, liberally, cheerfully, because it's all about grace. Not an obligation at all, but because you have set us free. And the God who created this universe is a generous God. He will never lack. He is the God who says, I will richly supply all of your needs. Therefore, trust me. So be generous, all of you. You'll see what I can do in your life. Trust me. So thank you, Lord, because you've given the church leaders who are reliable trustees. Thank you that they can look after your funds and to disperse that to the best of their integrity. And so thank you that you formed us as a church. We're grateful. We're thankful for all the blessings we receive. Lord, would you bless us so that we might teach your word more purely, more gladly. Lord, bless us so that we might be able to reach more people with the gospel of Jesus Christ. Lord, bless our church so that we'd be able to support more and more missionaries in the world who are in the hard areas, reaching the hardest people to reach. And Lord, if there's anyone here, even in our midst, a young person, Lord, may you call that person to be your missionary. And we as your church will be around that person to love and pray and support until your work is finished. Thank you, Lord. Thank you again for this time to be in this place. Thank you for your word. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.